We have been going through Luke, Acts, and we will keep going through that. So just as a quick recap, Luke, Acts is written by the Apostle Luke. He decided to write Luke because God came to earth as a man, Jesus Christ. He preached and taught for 3 years, and then he resurrected from the dead and fulfilled the Old Testament law and brought grace and mercy into the world. And so because of that, Luke thought it probably would be a good idea to write that down. So he went around and talked to eyewitnesses. He went around and got accounts of what was going on, and that's how we end up with the Gospel of Luke and its sister book, the book of Acts. Now, the Acts of the Apostles then is the pickup of the church after Jesus ascends into heaven. We will do that after we get through Luke. But that's just a quick recap of the overarching theme then for you of what Luke is about. We decided to go through that because here at Vintage, the number one thing that we're about is making disciples. The mission for this church is when Jesus leaves the earth, he says, go into all the world, make disciples, teach what I taught. And so that is our heart. That's what we're trying to do. Everything that we focus on is about that. Complete from our Wednesday night serve programs and those sort of things, meeting basic needs, so then people are taken care of that way, so their hearts and minds will be open, so that they can receive the truth of the Word and become a disciple of Christ. So because of that, that's why we decided to go through Luke. If you're going to be like Jesus, it's probably a good idea to study the book that is about Jesus. So here we are. Now, if you've been coming for the past few weeks, or you've been watching online, or all of that jazz, you will know we have talked about a lot of weird stuff in Luke 13. For a recap, we've talked about fig trees, we've talked about donkeys and when you're supposed to feed them, we've talked about narrow doors, we've talked about women who can't walk upright, and we've talked about mustard seeds. So Jesus has been all over the place with his messages and what he's been teaching, and I wish I could tell you today that it's going to have some continuity, but it doesn't. Today we're going to talk about chickens, so that's fun. We're going to go from there last week to where we are this week, where we pick up and have a conversation about chickens. Jesus, in these verses we're going to look at, compares himself to a mother hen. I would have loved to have been in that planning meeting between Jesus and God the Father when they sat down and said, okay, Jesus, what are you going to hit him with today? You're the Alpha and Omega. You're the mighty warrior. You're the conqueror of death, hell, and the grave. You're coming on a horse with that tattooed on your leg to redeem your church. What do you want to tell them? And Jesus said, I'm a chicken. Right? Such a weird thing. And I know people are looking like, what are you talking about? And I'll tell you what I'm talking about. When you do expository preaching and you go line by line through a verse, you really start to see verses pastors don't preach, right? Where they're like, I'm not touching the chicken verses, we're moving on. But because of that, we're going to get into chicken stuff. And so, as you know then, if we're going to preach about chickens, then that meant that this week, if you were to do my search engine history, you would see that I searched, tell me about mother hens. Tell me about chickens. Are chickens territorial? Are chickens, they are creepily territorial. They will, if there are okay, so if there's a chicken coop, I know you guys don't care, but I got the mic. Listen, if there's a chicken coop, and there's a bunch of female chickens, and there's only one chick, the chickens are not smart enough to know that chicken only belongs to one hen. That chick belongs to all the hens. So if you go in there and they think you're going to try to hurt, they will attack you. One of my favorite videos I found on YouTube, if you have a heart and soul, don't watch it, but it's about this guy is filming a weasel attack chickens. So the weasel's that little like rat thing that people like used to kill and wear around until that wasn't okay anymore. But this weasel comes in, and this mother hen who has literally no defense. Like chickens' defense is to flap around and squawk. Like that's what God gave them. Like you want to defend yourself, just wave your fat arms and scream. That's what we have for you. This weasel comes in, and there's like 3 little chicks running around behind. This mother hen squares up like, let's do it. Like you and me, weasel, let's go to work. And so this weasel tears this chicken apart because, the chicken's got no chance in the world. But it is the mindset then of like, I will die. My life does not matter. All that matters is the chickens. So now you can kind of see where Jesus maybe doesn't go with this, right? That is why he chooses to compare himself to a mother hen. So, without further ado, all I can tell you is today's about chickens. Let's jump into Scripture. When you pick this up, it begins like this. This is Luke 13, verse 31. It says this. At that very hour, some of the Pharisees came and said to him, "Get away from here, for Herod wants to kill you." Why is Herod wanting to kill him? Who is Herod and what is going on? Herod Antipas is the current Jewish king recognized by the Roman government but not recognized by the Jews. So he's the son of Herod, because we're creative with our names in this time. And so he is around. He goes and argues that he should get to be the king, and he'll swear fealty to the Roman, to Caesar, and say Caesar is God, which if you don't know, one of the Ten Commandments is, no other gods before, so you can't declare someone else. So you might know your constituency, then suddenly it's going to be very upset with you. That's what he does. He comes back, and then he builds his own temple, and the Jews don't really like him, but he gets extraordinarily rich, and he is brutal. If you remember, when we talked about John the Baptist, this is the man who had John the Baptist executed. And so, Jesus then is doing the things that he does. He's in this neighborhood, and these Pharisees come up and say, "You need to get out of here, they're going to kill you." Now, we don't know what the motivation is for the Pharisees. We don't know if these are like Nicodemus Pharisees who've been converted by Jesus, who are like, "You actually might be the Messiah, so I'm trying to protect you, you need to get out." Or if they're like, "Ha-ha, Herod is going to kill you." We don't know. And then Jesus responds in the way, if you've been with us and you've studied with us, or if you are a fan of Christ, he responds in the way exactly how you would expect him to respond, with zero care for the outcome of his words. He just says what is right. Here's his response. This is picking up in verse 32. He said to them, "Go tell that fox, behold, I cast out demons and perform cures today and tomorrow, and on the third day I finish my course. Nevertheless, I must go on my way today and tomorrow and the day following, for it cannot be that a prophet should perish away from Jerusalem." So then what's he do? Well, first off, if you wanted to know, and now you will, he calls him a fox, but if you do the Greek word study, that's actually the female form of fox, so he calls him a female fox as an insult, and that's lost in the text, and that lets you know that Jesus has a sense of humor, which should make most of us in this room happy. And he said, "Go tell that Dixon that I'm going to cast out demons, and I'm going to heal people, and then I'm going to preach, but then on the third day, I have to go back to Jerusalem." Basically, essentially saying, I'm going to do what I'm going to do. He can calm down. I'm leaving in 3 days. That's what he has to say. Now, what we do know is this is probably foreshadowing, which means he's going to tell us something that's going to happen in advance, but not directly tell us of the death and resurrection. Because Jesus now is headed back to Jerusalem, and he won't ever leave that area. He goes back to Jerusalem, and he is making a march towards Golgotha and the cross and giving his life. And so there's that underlying current too then of I'm going to cast out demons, I'm going to heal people, but on the third day, I'm going home. I'm going back to Jerusalem. I'm going back to where the temple is. I'm going back to where God the Father resides. I'm going back to where I'm supposed to be, because a prophet can't die away from Jerusalem. We need to remember that when Jesus came to earth, he came first and foremost to call the Jews back to where they're supposed to be. And they don't accept that. They want Jesus to be the Messiah they want him to be. One of the struggles most of us have in this world is we're not willing to submit our preconceived notions on who and what we think leadership should act like. Instead of saying Christ is to be Christ and I will submit and be obedient to what he says, we say Christ should act like this. And it's the same thing here, that when the Messiah shows up to redeem them again, to call them out of the concentration camps and the things they were dealing with Roman occupation and the lines of executions and all of the terrible things going on, and God delivers them and says, "Here is your Redeemer, here is your Messiah," they go, "We don't want that Messiah. We don't want that." And so then it makes sense when you read the next lines in this verse that Jesus responds like this. Picking up in verse 34, he says, "Oh, Jerusalem, Jerusalem, the city that kills the prophets and stones those who are sent to it. How often would I have gathered your children together as a hen gathers her brood under her wings, and you were not willing. Behold, your house is forsaken, and I tell you, you will not see me until you say, Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord." You see the heart of a mother in the text today dealing with Jesus and how he views Jerusalem. Because what does he say? I longed to be like a hen. I longed to be like your mother. I wanted to pull you into me. I wanted to bring you under my wings. I wanted to protect you, but you have forsaken me. And so none of you will see me again until you say, blessed is the name of the Lord. Until you recognize who it is that I am. And so then we're in a weird world because people don't preach and teach this all the time. But there is that aspect to the character of God that relates to the feminine side of he's like a mother. If you don't understand that, and I know some of you, who knows what you come out of in your backgrounds, and I know everybody's had all kinds of different parental experiences, so let's just pause on that today, and let's think about what a parent is supposed to be instead of maybe what you've experienced. If you've had bad experiences with parents, I'm sorry. At some point we have to let it go and let God heal you, but let's just hit pause on that and let's talk about what parents are supposed to be. Mothers tend to be more doting, more loving. The term mother hen in its day was actually a way to describe an overbearing mother. She's a mother hen. She's always in business. She's always fidgety. She's always trying to control everything. And fathers love their children, but it's a different approach. Right? It just is. The way that a dad deals with his kids and teaches his kids and loves his kids is different than a way that a mother does. Mothers tend to be more unconditional about love and acceptance with their children than fathers do. Fathers usually come from a place of understanding and a place of like, I get where you're at, I may not agree with it, but you're my kid and I feel responsible, I'm going to do the things I'm supposed to be and be a good dad. Mothers they'll justify everything. He just made a bad choice. She just made a bad choice. She's a good person way down in there because she is a good person. That's moms. It's this unconditional, crazy approach to your children. If you don't think that's true, go mess with some mom's kids in front of her. And watch the sweet people that you know turn into these wild animals. Like, don't rip their throat out. They just said our kid is annoying. Our kid is annoying. It's going to be okay. They ain't talking about my kid. They don't know who my kid is. Only I get to talk about my kid. They're going to talk about my kid. I'm going to rip their throat out. Shh. Chill out. And so then with Jesus, he has this plan and this idea for what he wants his people to do and what he wants the Jews to be and what he's trying to accomplish, and they reject him. They don't do what they want. If you're a parent in this room and you've got a wayward son or daughter, you get it, that your kid's away from where you want them to be, you don't know how to reach them, you don't know how to teach them, you don't know how to bring them back to where they're supposed to be, that these words should resonate with you when he says, oh, Jerusalem, Jerusalem. If you don't know the story, let's run through it real quick so we have a good understanding and so you don't say things that aren't true. In the beginning, God created man and woman. And he gave them free will, which means he gave up the right to control us and tell us how to live and what to do. He could have made us automatons, little robots that just go around and we just, yep, God, you're the best because I don't know how to say anything other than that. And whatever you want me to do, that's what I'm going to do. It's my instinct. You created me that way. I can never make any choice or decision, but I also can never create. I can never love. I can never think. I can never reason. I don't have any of that ability because you just made me as this machine. And so because he loved us so much, he creates us with free will and the ability to choose. But if you do that, you have to concede that they may choose differently than you want them to. You may raise a child right, you may do everything that you know to do, and they may still make choices or decisions that break your heart. It does not mean you're a failure as a parent. It means that they have free will. So in the midst of that, mankind sins. Right? Imagine if you're God, you create this perfect garden, this perfect place, you put these people in it, you say, just live here, tend to the garden, take care of the garden, enjoy each other, I'll see you every day, I'll be in your presence, and we'll live together in paradise, and you'll worship, and you'll love me, and that's what you're made to do, and it's going to be great. Just don't eat from that tree or that tree. Just don't do, but if you don't, everything, they're like, we're going to eat from the tree. Which is humanity. Like, we're still like that. We still have like this contrarian attitude where it's like, maybe we shouldn't do that. Don't you tell me what to do. I'm going to do whatever I want. And so mankind sins. But God, because he's like that mother, because he has that thing in him, he refuses to be separated from the thing that he created to love him. Because he loves us. And so then you have the Old Testament goes along. You have Abraham and Isaac and Jacob. You have these patriarchs that he begins to speak to and call to and tell, I'm going to give you this belief, and I'm going to give you this law and how to live and how to act so that we can reconcile if you are obedient, if you'll do as I ask. And they end up in Egypt, in the truncated Edrington version of the Old Testament. And when they're in Egypt, they're in complete control of the Egyptian government. They're slaves. They're being mistreated and beat. They're killing their children. It's horrible. And they're crying out, God, help. Help us. So he sends Moses to have this Exodus experience where he calls them out of darkness and he takes them out to this mountain. And while they're out there, they're hanging out, and he gives them the law. He tells them, keep this law. If you keep this law, you'll be made righteous. If you do these things, then you can circumvent the outcome of sin, which is death. Because you sinned, you broke creation, and you're going to die. You're going to suffer. You're going to have pain. Life's not going to be easy. But if you keep these laws, if you do these things, then we can have a relationship and things will be good. You may hear that and go, perfect. That's what Christianity is, right? That's what it feels like. Keep the rules. Don't cuss. Don't drink. Don't listen to rock and roll. Don't dance. Don't watch this. Don't vote that way. We're all going to be good. But that's not how the story ends. In fact, I would tell you, the whole Old Testament exists to lay the framework for Jesus to go back to Jerusalem. That's the whole point. So if you're like, I don't like the Old Testament, I want to read the New, then you don't understand what Jesus did. The whole Old Testament lays the groundwork for Christ to make mankind righteous. Jesus himself literally said, I haven't come to do away with the law, but to fulfill it. Well, what's fulfilled law? You're made righteous so that you can have interaction with God. And so you have the Exodus, and they go out. Now, if we skip all the way then to Jesus, the Jews are back in what? Occupation. They're suffering. They're under Roman rule. Things are not good. It's not going well. They're on the crux of having right. And the interesting thing is when Jesus heads back, it's right at the same time here of the Exodus out of Egypt. It's Passover again. When the death angel, if you aren't familiar with the Exodus story, Passover is when the death angel comes through Egypt and he kills all the firstborns unless they put the blood of the lamb over their door. And then that allowed death to pass over the Jews, and that's what finally lets Pharaoh say, okay, get them out of here. I can't deal with the people that have that much power. So just be gone. So then Jesus, when we get all the way back, it's the same thing. He's teaching and he's talking and he's like, look, I've come to redeem you. I've come to make you a new thing. Can you imagine how heartbreaking it must have been that they rejected him? I mean, what would it look like in Exodus when Moses marches into Pharaoh's thing and says, let my people go, that's from Yahweh, do what he says, or we're going to have bugs and frogs and death, it's going to be, and they're like, well, we got it, and the Jews are like, yeah, I get it. But in this case, here comes Jesus, and he says, no one comes to the Father but by me. I've come to set you free. You won't worship in temples, you'll worship in spirit and truth. And they go, no, we don't want that. We want what we had. We just want you to go out with mean Romans. And Christ is like, this thing's so much bigger than worldly rule. My kingdom's on this earth. And they're like, no, we want this. So then when you read his lament, when you see him crying out to people about Jerusalem, it should resonate with your heart if you're a mother or if you have children, that you can understand the pain and the frustration he's going through. I've literally come to call you out of occupation. I've literally come to free you from oppression, to make you righteous, to set you free. And all you have to do is accept me as your Messiah, and you haven't done it. Jerusalem, Jerusalem, where you kill prophets and stone those who are sent to you. I long to be a hen and pull you underneath of me like a brood. I long to be over you, and you have forsaken that. You have left me with no other choice. There's a foreshadowing then of what happens with Jesus. Because God will not be circumvented by the Jews' inability to see Christ as the Messiah. So if they won't accept him, then Jesus says, I'll go to everyone. I was talking through this with my wife, and she's like, so then do you think that God would rather have saved the Jews, and we're just second chance, and we get into this weird place of, I think the expectation and the hope was that the Jews would have reconciled. But God is God and knows they're not going to. So Jesus being fully human and fully God, you see that dissonance in his character when he talks about the Jewish people. Because there is hope as a human being that they will reconcile, that he won't have to die, that they can be the shining force of grace and mercy in this world. But he knows full well they're not going to, and the world desperately needs to have the Old Testament fulfilled so that mankind can find righteousness. And so he heads back to Jerusalem. So what's he head back to do? To die. To die. For people who've rejected him. And people who don't know him. Because he is a mother. He has that unconditional, I will do whatever I have to do to bring my children back into where I want them to be. I have never met a mom who has stood before me with tears in her eyes and said, I don't know what to do. I'm scared for my kids. They're making horrible decisions. They're going to die. They're going to be in prison. Pastor Pat, I don't know what to do. I have never met one that has ever said to me, but I wouldn't do whatever I had to bring them back. You think moms won't lay down their lives so that their kids can live better? You're nuts. That's how moms, that's just how they exist, the good ones. And Jesus is the same way. So yes, in our text this morning, his heart breaks because they won't do that. But he doesn't leave it on a negative note and say, behold, your house is forsaken, and then that's it. What's he ended on? I tell you, you'll not see me until you say, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. He's not closing the doors on the Jews. What he's saying is, I'm going to go do something so big and so large that if you want to interact with me again, you're going to have to recognize what it is that I've done. Which is the fulfillment of the Old Testament. Jesus dies at Passover. There's a reason why he dies at Passover. They smeared the blood of lambs on their doors so that death would pass over. Christ becomes that lamb. You smear that blood over your own proverbial door so that when death comes for you, it sees the blood of the lamb. And you are made righteous because of the actions of Jesus. Christianity, then, is not about you keeping a bunch of rules. It's about you submitting your character to the plan Christ has for creation, which is the plan to say, we are sinners. We can't make perfect choices. We cannot make ourselves righteous. We cannot measure up. And it's easy to run down that dark road in your head then of what the world looks like without Christ. People are angry, and they're hurting, and they're sad, and they're frustrated, and they're trying to figure out, why am I here? What's my purpose? What am I supposed to do? How am I supposed to live? How am I supposed to act? And in the midst of that, Christ is the answer. Hens don't judge chicks. It's sad I have to say that, but it's the most basic part of this analogy. When you're a baby, you're a baby. If you have a baby, when you get to experience that, and that baby fills its diaper, you don't walk into the nursery, put the baby down, and give it a stern talking to about making better choices. Because you love the baby. And you're going to train and care for the baby. All Jesus asks for the liberation of culture is for you to submit your own ideas and your own thought processes. That's it. And he loves you so much, he's willing to let you fill your pants. He cares about you. Like that hen facing down a weasel. Like, let's go around. I ain't afraid of you. You should be. That weasel's going to tear you to pieces. Will the chicks live? Probably, but you'll be dead. It's worth it. Jesus, when he faced his crucifixion, they ripped his beard out. They hit him with a cat of nine tails. 39 times, not 40. That would have been inhumane. They strip him down naked. They make him carry his own crossbeam through the streets while the crowd jeers and cheers for his death. They nail him to the crossbeam. Then they hang him for 6 hours while they poke him in the face with a sponge on a stick that they use to clean themselves after they go to the bathroom. This is the Son of God and the Messiah. This is the man who stood on a hill and said, Jerusalem, Jerusalem, why have you forsaken me? Come to redeem a people, and that's what they did. And in the midst of that, Jesus never retaliates. He never gets angry. You know why? Because just like that hen, he's thinking, I'm just pulling the brood underneath of me. And if I can just stand here with my arms this wide long enough, when it's said and done, God the Father will redeem what is broken. And so you can break me, you can crush me, you can rip my skin from my body, you can hit me and whip me, you can put a spear into my side, but you cannot take away what it is this mother is about to accomplish. Which is why he said from the cross, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. Jesus shows his radical, unconditional, reckless love when he hangs on a cross at the place of the skull to redeem mankind. To fulfill the Old Testament and say, nothing that you have done will ever separate you from the God who created you all those years ago. When he put Adam and Eve into a garden and he gave them purpose and design, that's why you're here. To work and to tend to his creation and to have relationships with each other. And no matter how far away from that you get, no matter how selfish, how sinful, no matter how broken your life seems, God is bigger than that because the cross in Jerusalem. Because the blood is unending and because it never runs out and you just smear it over your door. You just wake up every day and you remind yourself the blood's still there, and I may have messed up yesterday, I may have made bad choices, but that blood never runs out. And he redeemed me then and he redeems me now, and I stand in submission to who he is because he is a mother. And he loves his kids. And he's going to go after you. As we come to the end of the day, that's what it's all about. You may be in this crowd and think, my kid's wayward. You may think, I know people, there's no way they'll ever come to know Jesus. You need to get that out your head. There is nobody that is so far gone they can't hear the truth of the Word. And there's really only two people in the world. There's those of us that Christ lives in, that's a representation of Jesus in this world, and there's those that don't know Jesus. And so if you're a representation of Jesus, you need to be like a mother hen. You need to have love and compassion and patience for those who are lost. Because they need somebody to put your wings over their head and protect them from this broken world. To listen to the things they say. To validate their emotional states. But then begin to teach and love and train them how to know who God is so they can find their purpose and their place. If you're a wayward son or daughter, welcome to the club. You don't think every person in this room was that at some point, then you don't understand Christianity. We've all been lost and found. We've all been the one sheep that wandered away from the pack. Christ has redeemed us, and he will redeem you. And so if you're hurt, if you're broken, if you're questioning your place, if you don't understand why you're full of anger, if you don't understand why you're full of pain and suffering, if you have these questions about life, you need Jesus. You need the redemption of the cross, and you need to come under the wings of the Savior that loved you so much that in spite of your sin, He gave His life for you. We need to be like chickens. Let's pray.